Hey, it's Ede Fox.
And Imani Dawson.
And we're bringing you episode 2 of the
Black Keto Podcast. Yeah, boy!
Yo.
Welcome to Black Keto, where we're bringing you Keto for the culture.
Hey, I'm Ede Fox, and I lost 80 pounds on a low-carb ketogenic diet. Adopting a low-carb diet was the very best thing I ever did for my own health, weight, and mental well-being, and I want to help other black folk achieve the same success.
That's right, girl. Power to the people. I'm Imani Dawson, and I've been living La Vida Keto for nearly 4 months. I'm down about 25 pounds and losing it like an Usher song.
I just wanna take it nice and slow.
We created this podcast to share our personal experience and inspire other people of color to
Get aboard the keto train! Just recognize that we are not doctors or other kinds of trained medical professionals, and we are not dispensing medical advice, so don't even think about trying to sue us.
We have so much to talk about: diabetes, heart disease, eating well on a budget, and hot topics for our community.
Soon come. All of that and more. So make sure you keep listening and subscribe, because we are bringing you keto for the culture.
But first, here's the latest in keto news.
Yo.
Okay, before we give the lowdown on keto, let's actually define it for the people. Ade, drop that science.
It's pretty easy. A ketogenic diet is low in carbohydrate, high in fat, and moderate in a protein. And eating this way actually allows your body to burn all of your fat stores on your butt, your thighs, all the different places that you want it gone. And your body will burn that fat for energy rather than using sugar for energy. And this translates into longer lasting energy, more satiety at meals, and reduced inflammation and much easier weight loss.
Perfect. Now, say it all again as a rhyme. Come on, channel your inner Roxanne Shante.
I wish I could. But the best way, I just want to make sure that you know, the best way to do this is to reduce your carbs to less than 20 grams a day and eat moderate amounts of protein. But make sure that those 20 grams of carbs are coming from green leafy vegetables and dairy products and nuts, and not Skittles or donuts, which could be delicious but is not going to help you.
Thanks, girl. That was very helpful and informative, even if it did not contain any rhyme schemes or iambic pentameter.
You know, if I could do that, man.
She's like, why'd I be making a podcast on keto? I'd be out there teaching everybody how to rhyme. All right, well, let's get back to keto. The hottest thing in the diet world right now when it comes to keto is the fact that keto is so hot. According to Google Trends, interest exploded this January, which makes total sense, right? Because it's the beginning of the year. It's all about making diet resolutions. My question to you, Ade, is why keto now? Why is keto having a moment? Why aren't we talking about something else?
Well, you know, actually, this has been a long time coming. It started with the paleo, then moved into lower carb, and this is the next iteration. And frankly, it's happening because the diet works. Celebrities are getting on the keto train because it's the fastest and easiest way to lose weight. And it helps people change their biomarkers for diabetes and heart disease and all of these other problems that people are having. And it works. I mean, it just works.
Well, I'm certainly glad it's having a moment. Personally, I haven't been following the low carb world. And really, since I gained 4 pounds on the Atkins diet, I was kind of like, let me try something else. But now we're back, and I'm just as cool as a celebrity. And speaking of celebrities being all up on this plan, I read that Alicia Vikander, who's the Swedish actress that starred in the Tomb Raider reboot that just kind of came and went, used the diet to muscle up for the role. Now, I didn't see the movie, and I'm like, because really, who could replace Angelina Jolie? And I also feel like the original came out like yesterday.
I know, Hollywood is creatively bankrupt, but come on.
It's like, if you liked it 5 years ago, you gonna love it today. I'm sorry, but Alicia can't touch Angelina, and I am not just saying that because she scooped up that sexy vanilla villain Michael Fassbender either. I just think she's kind of mousy, but the movie is big in China, where apparently they have a thing for dull and ethnically ambiguous looking white women.
Ooh, you're on a roll.
Oh, but girl, follow me, because I'm moving on to a much more interesting white woman. Melissa McCarthy is reportedly down 75 pounds. Down to them dimples.
Wow.
Looking good, Melissa. Keep up the great work.
Well, the great thing is that she shed the weight over 2 years, so it was a gradual weight loss, and that's kind of how I did it.
She is looking positively slim thick these days. At this point, she'd be sexually harassed all over the hood.
What?
Listen, I'm not advocating for it. I am team Me Too all day. I am sharing facts only. I am from East New York, which makes me a hood survivor / expert. And speaking of my beloved hood, I know that the people are breathing a sigh of relief because rapper Rick Ross survived his latest health scare.
Oh, what happened?
Well, he was rushed to the hospital a few weeks ago after a possible heart attack reportedly brought on by complications from pneumonia. And the good news is that he's recovering, but it really was looking bad for a second. TMZ had him down for the count. I mean, I felt like they had written his obituary. I know it isn't strictly keto, but I wonder if his weight loss helped him get through this health crisis. Because, you know, when he first came out, Ross sounded like he could hardly breathe. He was making them Biggie, gasping for air.
Oh, that's not funny, but you sound funny when you make that sound.
It's just me.
But in any event, so I'm not a doctor and I certainly can't speak to his actual medical condition. But yeah, almost every problem is going to be lessened by losing some weight. Being overweight exacerbates and complicates all kinds of health problems. I actually heard that Ross lost 75 pounds from his high of 350, and he did it with intermittent fasting. It sounded like he was restricting the time that he was eating to between noon and 5 p.m. a couple of times a week. And this is exactly intermittent fasting. If you Google that, you'll find all over the internet people are talking about eating in a 6-hour window or an 8-hour window. And it's possible these dietary changes could have changed his life. He started with intermittent fasting, and now he might want to try keto.
For sure, especially since I also heard that he had seizures. I was never there. I didn't see him. But reportedly, it was seizures that first started him on his health journey anyway. And the ketogenic diet started as a diet to control epilepsy. So, win-win.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear the history of the ketogenic diet. It was a really effective treatment for kids with epilepsy and other problems too, and diabetes. It was very early on. That was the first treatment until insulin was discovered.
Makes you appreciate the old ways for sure. But let's go back to the future and really get into today's main topic, which is ketoing while black.
Yo. Yo.
So the keto lifestyle is revolutionizing how the world eats, but there can be some cultural barriers for us black folk looking to lose weight and reclaim our health.
That is 100% true. I know for myself, I'm taking it day by day, and for me, carbs are just the essence of soul food. So going without candy yams and fried fish forever, just the thought of it makes me cringe and cry a little bit on the inside. So my question to you, ma'am, is do I really have to give up soul food carbs forever?
Well, I know this sounds harsh, but yeah.
No!
But on the plus side, you'll eventually start to lose your taste for them.
Okay, sure.
If you really want to think about it, having abundant or daily access to refined grains and sugars is actually a relatively recent phenomena in our community.
Okay, so I'm just going to try and think in 10,000 year leaps like you do. It's recent phenomena for me is last week.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking about let's say the last 200 or 300 years.
Oh, those painful enslaved years. And
well,
years.
And even after. Significant access to sugar and refined grains, flours, that kind of thing, pastries, muffins. I mean, really really wasn't until like the 70s and 80s that people started to have access to those kind of foods all the time. I mean, before then, I mean, I'm not talking about way back.
So
but even
good to
our
know that I was
parents-
born right at the beginning of the fat era.
Oh yeah,
My time had come, clearly.
Yes,
Okay.
we were lucky, you know, to
Yay!
have one foot in either world.
Tell me about it.
Um,
All the angst from my teenage thighs.
Yeah. The baby boomers were probably the last generation where poverty manifested as the kind of food insecurity where you might not get to eat at all.
Is that what I always wanted to talk about, starving children somewhere? Because
Well,
I got that
Yeah.
children starving in Africa from 3 different generations in my family.
Well, so those lessons that we in Gen X and younger got about cleaning our plates, like that's kind of outdated and even harmful in our current food environment. So, like today, many people in our community are living in what we call food swamps, not deserts. So it's not that there's no food. There's access to quote unquote food. It's just not good quality food. And
Swamps,
it's usually
swamps
carb
everywhere.
based.
Look at that. You just can't get away from swamps. You have a political swamp, a culinary swamp.
Yeah.
Let's just call America swampland.
This is why we are now seeing this upsurge in obesity and diabetes and all of these other diseases.
Because those swamps are filled with, those food swamps filled with carbs, I see. And that's why Craig and them is all diabetic. And if they aren't now, then they probably pre-diabetic.
Yeah, for sure.
I can remember going, this is a total sidebar, but I remember going to a De La Soul listening party in 2005. And fun fact about me, De La Soul is my all-time favorite hip-hop group.
Oh, I love them too.
Yes, they started me on my journey to being a hip-hop head. Before that, I was very comfortable with the Rick Ashley's and the Never Gonna Pick You Up countdowns of the world. Like, where's Casey Kasem at? And, you know, they kind of burst on the scene and made me realize that I could be whoever I wanted to be in hip-hop. I could be a Daisy age person. I could be a black nerd. And that's something I wear on my chest now. But I was much more embarrassed about that in my past. Anyway, so long story short, I saw De La Soul and immediately felt like a teenager. Except I was very much not a teenager. At that point, it was 2005. And they were like standing around talking about diabetes and like high blood pressure and stuff. And I was like, wow. I was like, they are getting old. But you know, now that I myself am older, I feel like it really isn't just an old people condition anymore. We're talking about like these food related diseases, adult onset diseases.
Well, you're always young in my eyes.
That's because you're older.
That's true. Because you
Okay.
have to be young. Otherwise, it makes me old. The truth is that African Americans are twice as likely as non-Hispanic whites to die from diabetes. And 18% of all adult African Americans have been diagnosed or have undiagnosed diabetes, as compared to 7% of non-Hispanic whites.
Wow, that's that painful math right there.
Well, I mean, but it's more than twice as many. I mean, there is a significant portion of the population that has diabetes or it's undiagnosed, but will be eventually be diagnosed. We had to stop calling type 2 diabetes adult onset diabetes because so many kids started to get it.
Damn, let me just add a little Debbie Downer to that mix, because there are a whole list of ailments like heart disease and stroke and high blood pressure, arthritis, gout, and even some cancers that we as black people are more susceptible to because we're overweight and obese. And here are some more depressing numbers. About 1.5 times more likely to face obesity in our community. Because more than 75% of us, including 69% of men, that's 169, that's not that fun, and 82% of women are considered overweight and obese.
And the excess weight is just another complication, adding to high mortality rates relative to Caucasians from most causes, including heart disease and cancer.
Okay, that's just terrifying. And I think that we can all agree out there that we want to live as a people. So how do we fit keto into our culture? Because I'm not ready to give up all my soul food delectabilities in my soul. And I'm sure there are a lot of people feeling the same way. So let's talk a little bit about how we fit keto and soul food together. Because I know, to be fair, soul food, which we all know is black people food that the South appropriated, worked for folks at least a little better when they were toiling for hours in the hot sun, planting things or harvesting them.
Yes, and thankfully we are not enslaved anymore, and we're not being forced to do that kind of work, and hardly anyone lives with that amount of daily exercise anymore.
Definite upside. Thank you. Enjoying freedom. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not saying we need to get rid of desk jobs, but we need to think about how to be a little bit more active in our day-to-day lives.
Without the lash.
Yes, exactly. And I think for a lot of people, these foods can work if you only eat them a few times a year. But there are also plenty of soul food treats that fall into the keto category, so it's not an either or here.
All right, I'll give you that. The first one off the top of my head, collard greens with ham hocks, because the best thing about keto for me is that I can eat pork again. I know you remember when everybody stopped eating that swine, because I did too. I absolutely jumped on that pig is bad for you bandwagon, but I really did miss it. Although no one else would cop to missing it, so I kept that information to myself.
So no more turkey neck collards for you.
Yeah, no, I'm done with those, unless I'm being polite. Because, there are lots of other people who are not yet pro-swine. And they're actually good, too. Like, I don't want to take anything away from that. I had some delicious smoked turkey collard greens. I think everybody really learned to adapt, myself too. But now that I'm back on my pork, I realized that they're not the same without the pork fat.
Plus, if you want to be really fancy, you can also add bacon.
Okay, stop, because you are now at over-the-top deliciousness. You're at that point.
Well, that's all salt pork is bacon. I just, we've been talking about it so much now, I cannot stop thinking about it. I think I'm going to go buy some salt pork. Excuse me. I got to go.
Okay, well, we'll just see you back at the next show, Ede. I'll finish by myself. Everyone can hear my attempt at combining hip-hop and keto. I'm on a mission.
Well, to get back to the collard greens, I also add broth and butter to my collard greens. It's a secret ingredient, evidently.
Okay, butter sounds bizarre, but it is scrumptious, so I'll take it. We will have to discuss that at length a little bit later.
Yeah, absolutely. But what are some of your favorite keto friendly soul foods?
I am seafood all day, and I don't know if that's strictly soul food, but we ate crabs consistently every summer in my house growing up. And actually, I have recently learned that a lot of sub-Saharan West Africans incorporate seafood into their diets. Thank you, Jessica B. Harris, and your wonderful cookbooks. So I'm claiming this because I love seafood, and especially crabs. And I love to smother my crab legs in butter and Old Bay, which is my official soul food seasoning anyway. So with keto, I am excited because I could be in all the crab fest this summer. Like, hey, I can even kick it at Red Lobster again, which was 4-star dining when I grew up. Did you ever go there as a kid?
Unfortunately, I didn't live near one. I saw commercials on TV. I always wanted to go. I love lobster. I love crab. I loved shrimp back in the day and never got to go there.
See, this is what happens when you move your kids into better neighborhoods and you take them out the hood. You think you're doing what's right for them, and then they get deprived of Red Lobster. I am not ashamed to say that I know Red Lobster for the seafood lover in you. I had that song memorized. We were at Red Lobster for damn near every Dawson celebration back in the day, and I say that full of pride. Births, graduations, marriages, divorces.
Divorces?
Listen, sometimes that freedom is a celebration. I know somebody out there is got an amen on that. Anyway, I love the shrimp scampi, and them cheddar biscuits were the best. That is another thing that is sadly off the list right now.
Well, come on, let's focus on the things we can actually eat.
Fine!
And as far as I'm concerned, there are really only 4 soul foods that are totally off the list. And that's mac and cheese, stuffing, yams, and rice.
Okay, I know a whole bunch of people listening like, wait, I think you've forgotten some things. So, ma'am, there is cornbread, hush puppies, peach cobbler.
Okay.
Come on, like, don't make me go on here.
All right, I totally get it. Maybe they're more than 4.
Banana pudding. Throwing in another one.
But those are what I call special occasion foods. Remember when we had actual special occasions, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, maybe a birthday?
Absolutely. Although those special occasions foods sound a lot like anytime foods right about now.
Exactly. So the problem starts when stuff like sweet potato pie, buttermilk biscuits, and ribs drenched in barbecue sauce, that those things become the norm and not the exception. So we can only treat ourselves so much until a treat becomes a poison.
Wow, I feel like a million amens just resonated with that mic drop moment right there. That was epic. You are 100% correct. We can turn a treat into a poison. So what do you do when you are at special occasion family events or get-togethers with your friends or whatever when people aren't doing keto? Because I have been fasting my way through them, and that shit is difficult.
When I was a kid, everyone cooked from scratch. People were bringing dishes that they made at home. There was a lot of carb-heavy food. But now everybody's grown, and the senior generation now is just not interested in cooking. So it's kind of like we get together and it's at a restaurant or the food's catered and people want to eat healthier. And so it's not as carb-heavy as before. And it just seems like, there's always someone who can do it cheaper, faster, and better.
Cheaper and faster maybe, but certainly not better. Store-bought food, it always tastes a little bit artificial to me. I don't know. I feel like if people had to cook their stuff from scratch, they probably wouldn't want to eat it as much anyway.
No, that's an idea.
Well, what is your favorite keto soul food, ma'am?
Well, so what works best, and you're always going to find at every Black gathering and celebration, is wings.
Wings? What kind of wings are you talking about?
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be buffalo, although you will almost always find that at a Black celebration, but any kind of wings.
Okay, run that by me again. Can we just back it up? When did buffalo wings become part of the official soul food lexicon? Because I missed that.
Well, so this is not what we know traditionally as soul food, but at every single Black gathering of any kind, somebody brings wings. And the wings are delicious. And keto. Why shouldn't they be on the list?
Fine, Ede, I'm going to let you rock with that. Wings of any sort, except apparently fried, or the police will come
breaded.
Breaded. Thank you.
You can have fried. Fried is great.
Every kind of wing but breaded, officially now soul food. Got it? Got it. Fine, I'll give you wings. Now I want to know what carb-laden soul food is your favorite and how you avoid that, because I know you are Black and you must have soul food that you enjoy.
All right, we've got to keep this section short lest we pick up my cravings, your cravings, our listeners' cravings. But I will say that my favorite is 1, stuffing, 2, candied yams, and 3, cranberry sauce. The combination of those tastes in one mouthful is just spectacular.
That's
salty, sweet, and sour.
That is more taste explosion than a pack of Skittles. So how are you avoiding those?
Well, my first holiday season, I just did not have them. I focused on the turkey, the collard greens, salad, bacon, all my other favorite things. And that's what I did in the beginning. Now I will allow myself a small portion. And so I know that means that I might be right up on the edge of being still in fat burning mode, or I might knock myself out of ketosis. And it means a couple of days I'm going to be hungry, cranky, and bloated. I go up a couple of pounds, but it will come down as soon as I get back on plan. And that works for me. But
okay, so for those of us not nearly even close enough to be making special exceptions to the keto plan, because I don't even want to look in the same direction as a French fry, for example, which is not soul food, but it is food for Imani soul.
Well, I definitely took a year a full 12 months before I started thinking about trying little bits of this and that. And so back at those occasions in the first year, I did focus on the meaty stuff that I like to have. And we have been restricted from bacon, from pork, from delicious fatty things. And now I can have them.
Well, one thing to ensure that you always have what you like in terms of keto soul food is to just bring it yourself to the party.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a common dieter's trick everywhere is just, and you should bring the fattiest, most delicious things so that people, when they taste it, are like, man, this is how you lose weight?
Or all those people who are still on low carb diets who are eating all the sugar-free or the sugary snacks that are fat-free, rather, could be jealous that you get to eat some delicious prime rib or whatever you're eating.
Yeah.
Well, or some wings, I guess, if you're able.
Yeah. Well, in the beginning, they'll say, oh, you're going to drop dead of a heart attack. And after you've lost 50 pounds, they're going to say, so, what are you doing? How do we eat that?
Clearly, we have the food down, but there's also the issue of community. Now, when you went keto, there weren't really that many black people talking about the plan. How did you feel at that point?
Well, I'm used to being the only black person in many spaces, and I'm also an only child, so it didn't really bother me enough to abandon the diet. But I'm looking around the space and thinking, well, you know, where are my brothers and sisters? We're building keto community now in Wakanda.
Wakanda forever! Seriously, I 100% agree with you. It is affirming for me personally to look around and see so many other black people doing keto because my family thinks I'm a Looney Tunes, especially when I get alone with the butter dish.
Well, there's some real resources out there. Facebook groups like Black and Keto and Black Girls Keto 2. And of course, our group, Black Keto Girls.
Shameless plug. But for real though, we did start this podcast to be a gathering place for people of color to see our cultures and values reflected in the keto lifestyle. And because we like to eat and talk shit.
But we like to eat well and be healthy. So if you're thinking about keto or doing keto, make sure you join us every week.
That's right. We're like your keto besties, cheering you on and talking shit, you know?
Having a strong community will help keep you committed. And if you need personal help and support, we can even coach you. I'm a wellness coach and can guide you through the rough patches.
We got you. That's right. Black Keto, bringing food power to the people. And if you want more support and resources, definitely check out our website, blackketo.com. Online community is great. But Ede, what do you say to friends and family members that you have to deal with face-to-face still, sadly, who think that you are crazy for just eating fat? Because my sisters, I'm convinced, think I am on the fast track to a heart attack at this point.
Well, there's a couple of things going on here. I mean, one, yeah, you're going to get a lot of people hassling you in the beginning. You don't have to talk about what you eat. You are a grown-ass woman. You decide what goes in your mouth, and you don't have to answer to anybody about what you're eating.
You go, girl.
So yeah, you're going to get a little ribbing in the beginning, and you push back, and you just don't answer. You don't answer at all.
That's
but
right.
what's really
grown women don't have to answer. I refuse to answer that question on the grounds that I am a grown-ass woman.
That's right. But the other thing is, once you start to lose a chunk of weight, 25, 50, 75, 100 pounds, people are going to stop messing with you and they're going to say, hey, so how did you do that? Because I need to lose X number of pounds and I want to look like you.
So basically what you're saying is that my results will speak for themselves.
That's right.
Well, that's great, but I need to get back to the $1 million question. And I asked this earlier, and you gave me an answer that I wasn't that pleased with. This is important to me, though, so I need to come back to it. Just so we're clear, to be keto, do we really have to say goodbye to the soul foods that we grew up on forever? Like, forever, ever?
Okay. And I'm not saying that we have to give up all of the cultural carb-laden foods we love.
It's so hard to say goodbye to yesterday.
just have to eat them very, very sparingly, and only once we're in maintenance mode. You know, our generation, as I was saying before, we're used to a level of refined grains and carbs and sugar that people just didn't have access to in previous generations. And like my mom will tell me stories. My mom and my uncle, every summer through high school, my grandmother would send them down south to stay with their grandmother in South Carolina. And so they,
that must have been fun.
Yeah, well, so they went from the Bronx to a rural town in South Carolina. And I would hear all of these crazy stories about the stuff that they had to do, just everyday living.
Were they absolutely horrified?
I think that they started young enough that they just
didn't even think about it. They were like, yeah, we're going to the outhouse now. No biggie.
Exactly. So my mom would tell stories about how her grandmother would kill the chicken by swinging it around by its neck.
And were the kids involved in this activity, or did they just observe?
Well, so after the head came off, the headless chicken would run around and invariably end up running underneath the house. And somebody had to go get it
and make them kids work for their dinner.
Yeah, absolutely.
I sometimes want to tell my son, go get that chicken. And he's 5, so
it would make him much more appreciative.
For sure. Probably thinner, too. I mean, if you had to decide between the chicken getting it and you eating dinner,
yeah,
a lot of people might pass. I, myself, might kill the chicken.
Well, in terms of sweets and stuff too, like they had that. Apparently there was a pecan and a peach tree growing in the backyard. So they had choice of desserts. It was either peach ice cream or peach cobbler or pecan pie. And these did not come as a grouping or a trio. It was one or the other. And they had to put in a heck of a lot of work to make it happen.
Was that like an everyday thing? They were just like, let's just spend 5 hours a day making a peach cobbler or a pecan pie, no problem. We're going to have it for dessert.
No, I mean, who wants to put 5 hours into that kind of work? So you really just have to decide 3 foods that you absolutely love and then kind of let everything else go. That way you won't feel so deprived, but you will limit how much of these foods that you're eating. In the beginning, it was absolute and there was nothing sweet at all. I started to loosen that up, and I allowed myself dark chocolate, a small amount, like two little squares, not even a big square, a little square, a glass of white wine, nuts. I do think it's time for me to switch that up and have something else.
I can live with a top 3. Now, I have a question for you, though, and this is just off the top of my head. I'm wondering, do you get to rotate those 3 foods?
You can do whatever you want. You're grown and this is your body and you kind of have to figure out what works best for you.
Because I want a yearly switch. Like maybe one year I'll do French fries, sweet potatoes, and mashed potatoes. And the next year I'll do sugar, like just white sugar, just going around licking it with my tongue. Maybe that's too much. Maybe I'll do like watermelon or...
you have to see what works best for you.
Yeah. Well, seeing as how I am nowhere near picking maintenance foods, because I have been sneaking, I have true confessions of Imani. I have been sneaking some sugarless gum and some pistachio nuts, and the scale has punished me for that.
Some people are okay having nuts and various kinds of artificial sugars, and other people are not. And at different points in your journey, you'll be okay with them or you won't be. Just because it doesn't work for Imani doesn't mean that it won't work for you, but this is definitely something where your mileage
It feels like a case-by-case basis, and my case was like, nah, you can't have none of that. So I'm going back to starting from the beginning where I ate nothing.
Well, going back to basics is always a good idea. Stripping it down to leafy green vegetables and protein and fat.
Well, listen, as long as I have an option sometime in the future, and I think most people do have that option, except if you already have diabetes. I know that those people have to give up their sugary, carby foods for good, right?
You gotta face the facts of your life and what you're willing to sacrifice. And if you're willing to sacrifice your toes, your leg, your vision, or maybe even your life, sure, you can have some of these sweet treats.
And say we did. It's a wrap. You don't want to choose between lemon cake and your leg, and that's real. But the one food tradition that we can definitely all hold on to is flavor. And later on, we'll give you a savory soul food recipe to please your palate. But first, we've got your weekly dose of inspiration.
Yo. 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 Yo.
4 months into my keto lifestyle, and it's clear to me that it's really about mind over matter, like everything else in life, I suppose. And beyond feeling better and looking better, which is taking much longer than I personally prefer as an Aries with no patience. But I digress. I need inspiration to keep me focused, and I'm guessing that you guys do too. So every podcast, we're bringing you inspiration to keep you committed to your keto journeys as well. This week, my inspiration is coming from Coming to America.
Oh, yeah.
It's a Black classic and the definitive movie of my childhood.
I'll bet.
Can I have a sidebar moment, please? As someone named Imani, I feel that the Princess Imani, i.e. the woman that was initially chosen for Akeem, whom he ultimately rejected, got a bad rap. I mean, bark like a dog. Come on.
Oh, yeah. You remember that scene?
Oh, I will never forget it. And I have been waiting 30 years to get that off my chest. All right. Back to the inspiration. Vanessa Bell Calloway was drop dead gorgeous in the role. And I don't know how she's done it, but she's managed to look even better now. She had a birthday back in March, and I saw a recent picture of her, and I was like, whoa, she looks phenomenal at 61. She is straight up aging backwards. We're talking Benjamina Button here. Doesn't that seem like that would be like a black name anyway, Benjamina? Like Wilhelmina?
That's right.
I don't know.
Bettina.
Basically. And I'm not just talking
Benita.
about like looking good for somebody 61. She had real muscles, y'all. Okay? Not I'm waiting 4 years until I get my Social Security check muscles. She looked like she was like pop, pop. She had real guns for the gun show. So the next time I get a craving for sweet potato pie or any of the delicious but deadly soul foods that Ede has now forbidden me to eat, I'm just going to think about Miss Vanessa and having muscles into my 6th decade and push myself away from the table. Ede, who or what is inspiring you this week?
Right now, it's a what? There was a low-carb conference at Low Carb Breckenridge. I didn't go, but I caught a few of the videos. I really love hearing from some of my favorite low-carb superstars, as we are now starting to call them. Nina Teicholz has written a book about fats. She had a talk where she spoke about red meat and how animal fats were demonized by Ansel Keys, who is essentially the father of our current USDA dietary guidelines. Every government facility and agency is using those guidelines whenever they are providing food. So every public school, prison, hospital, senior center, any of those sorts of places, you are actually getting your food choices are coming from the USDA guidelines.
Well, I'm going to need the USDA to get it together before I end up in one of these government institutions in a nursing home, for example, because I will be one of those old ladies that's sneaking meat treats in my purse because you're not going to kill me with your disgusting food.
Nina Teicholz did a fantastic history of the switch between eating animal fats as a country to moving towards eating vegetable oils and much less fat, and connecting all of these changes in our diet to the health problems that we're having today. So, phenomenal book. I highly recommend that if you're interested in more of this kind of history, that you check out her book. So hearing the science about how all of this works and the impact of eating very high carb foods, this is really what reminds me of how important it is to make this change and how helpful it is for the human body to restrict how much carbs we're eating. It's science that keeps me motivated.
Nerd.
Evolutionary anthropologist, thank you very much.
What? Come on, nerd is a compliment. Blurred for life. That's Black Nerd for the uninitiated, and Black Nerds rule. We've been talking throughout this podcast about ketoing while black and soul food. I know we don't always agree on everything, but neither Ede nor myself can think of anything that says soul food more than collard greens. So Ede is going to share the recipe that she learned at her grandma's knee, because everyone knows that black grandmas are the best cooks in the entire world. Am I lying?
No, you are not. We were not a family that cooked using recipes. I learned what my grandmother did by standing around and watching her cook. There were no recipes, and if I had questions about how to cook something, I would call my grandmother and use whichever she told me. So I never had anything written down, so I'm going to describe to you what I saw my grandmother doing, and we'll go from there.
I think we'll take it, especially since your grandma seems to have been a woman ahead of her time.
Indeed, she really was a woman who loved her fats and actually practiced intermittent fasting for years. And she ultimately lived to be 96, so clearly she was onto something.
Clearly.
So the collard greens, we'll start out with 2 to 3 bunches of collard greens, not pre-washed. I'm talking about the leaves that are that you get whole. It's approximately 3 pounds.
That's for those of us out there who just like to buy them pre-washed in a bag. Apparently, this is heresy.
Yes.
Some parts of the community, including here in this room. So I will go hide my bag collards in the corner.
Yes, we want whole collard green leaves, not the kind that have been pre-washed and cut. Then you want 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar and potentially a 1/4 teaspoon of liquid smoke. That's optional if you like that smoky flavor. A 1/2 teaspoon of red pepper flakes, 1 yellow onion diced, 4 cloves of garlic minced, 1 ham shank is the way I like to make it now, although...
And why a shank and not a hock? Inquiring minds want to know, Ede.
I like
Don't be switching up the soul food recipes on us. You already forced wings upon us.
Well, you have to decide what meat you want to put in it. I like the ham shank because it is delicious, a smoked ham shank. It's very meaty. It adds a nice flavor and fat to the collard greens. But that, I understand, is non-traditional. There's also the ham hock. Then I would put, for a big pot of collard greens, I would probably put 3 ham hocks, especially if they're small. If they're big, then you want to go with 2. That's one kind of meat. But even before then, my great-grandmother used salt pork, and that was the tradition. And when you go to the supermarket and you look at a package of salt pork today, it is a 99.9% white pork fat and then a tiny little bit of meat. And it's delicious. It creates a lot of fat, though. We often don't see collard greens made that way anymore. I add 2 cups of chicken stock, and that's what the greens will simmer in. And then here is the semi-secret ingredient, butter. So you want to add it to taste. Start with a 1/2 stick of butter for a big pot of greens, and you may decide that you need more depending on the type of meat that you use.
Well, given your earlier fat back explanation of how greens tasted delectable not more than 2 generations ago, I kind of get where you're going with the butter now, although it does still seem a little bit like plopping a giant stick of butter in a can of collard greens. Or I should say a pan of collard greens.
Well, I will say, in my personal opinion, butter always makes everything taste better. So there isn't any food that can't be improved with butter.
That's a tough argument there. So I'm going to have to ask the folks at home to weigh in. Is Ede right? Am I right? Like, do collard greens and butter go together like peanut butter and jelly? Except we can't eat jelly anymore, so I mean just peanut butter.
Well, I'm beginning to understand what my grandmother was thinking about, because, my great-grandmother made it with salt pork, and then we were making it with ham hocks, and it may have been that salt pork was more expensive or not available. Who knows what were the reasons that my grandmother switched to ham hocks. And then in the early 80s, when there was all the talk about going low fat and lower calories and really trying to diet, a lot of people switched to turkey thinking that it was a lower calorie, a healthier option. And so,
they also, as I mentioned earlier about abandoning the swine, I think that there were a lot of people that were like, pork isn't healthy for you. Pork has worms.
Right.
Use turkey.
Exactly.
Turkey won't give us a heart attack.
Exactly. So my grandmother switched to making collard greens with smoked turkey wings or smoked turkey necks, but the fat was not there and it needed to be replaced. So instead of having the salt pork now, she would add butter and then margarine to the recipe. Now, I am opposed to margarine. Don't use margarine. But she did need to add that fat back in that wasn't there with the meat.
I mean, she could have used Crisco, so you might have
gotten
away with the W there on the margarine. If you think about it like that. Yeah.
Well, so remember, trans fats are really unhealthy. So eating Crisco, margarine, all of those things are not good choices. If you're going to eat butter, eat butter. Just eat butter. There's no benefit to eating margarine. So those are the ingredients. Now you've heard our little discussion here, and you can make your own decisions about what kind of meat you want to put in there.
And what kind of fat.
Yeah. You can also get access to, nowadays, lard, healthier lard. You probably don't want to buy the kind that you see in the supermarket that's in the green and white package.
Oh, no manteca?
No. Unfortunately, no. You do want to try to get lard from pastured pigs. It doesn't necessarily have to be that expensive, and you can even render your own. I haven't yet done that, but
well, as long as you don't have to choose between paying for your kids' college and having heritage pork, all good.
Yeah. The meat's going to be more expensive, but the fat, because people are still so afraid of fat, it's a very small circle of us who are embracing it. It's still very cheap to buy because right now butchers are just throwing it out. So you can probably get higher quality lard for less money than you imagine. So just to go through how you cook this, I fill up the sink with cold water, and then I rinse each leaf individually until the sand and settlement settle at the bottom of the sink. Then I shake the leaf dry thoroughly, but don't use a paper towel to dry them. You stack up 5 or 6 leaves of about the same size on top of each other, and you lay them topside down so that the main vein is on top. And then I slice the leaves on either side of the vein and then discard the stems. Just pull them out and discard them and try to preserve as much of the leaf as possible. Then I roll up the stack of leaves like a cigar and slice about 1 inch apart. So this is a quick way to get all of the greens cut up into equal sizes. So then you want to take the chopped onions and saute them in butter using your big stock pot. You want the biggest pot that you can find. The greens take up a lot of space until they start to cook a little and then they shrink down. So you need a really big pot. But at the bottom of that pot, you're going to saute chopped onions in butter until translucent, and then you're going to throw in some garlic very quickly and cook it until it's fragrant, probably not more than a minute. And then you put the collards in the pot and you mix them up so that the onion and garlic and butter mixture get all over the collard greens, until each leaf is coated in butter. Frankly, usually I put in 3/4 of the leaves and have to wait till they shrink down a little bit and add the rest of the leaves because I can't get them all into the pot at once. Then you add 2 cups of chicken stock until the pot is no more than 1/3 full. The leaves themselves, as they cook, release a lot of their own water, so you don't need to add a lot of water. It'll just become a goopy, soupy mess if you put in too much water.
Well, obviously, I've been doing it wrong because I've been boiling my collard greens since I started making them.
Well, you are simmering them or putting them on a low boil, but they just don't need to have that much water. They don't need to be submerged in them. Then you want to add the smoked ham shank or the ham hocks, and I just add them directly into the pot. If you're going to use salt pork, you're going to need to cook the salt pork separately. But to come back to it, then you want to add 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar to the mix and the 1/4 teaspoon of liquid smoke. Remember, liquid smoke, a little goes a long, long way. So you really want to be conservative. Don't add too much. If you want to start with 1/8 of a teaspoon, do that and work your way up in terms of the flavor. Then half a teaspoon.
Or in grandma's terms, just a little tap.
Yeah, a little tiny tap. And then a half teaspoon of red pepper flakes to taste. Some people like it spicy, some people don't. So you make your decision. You mix this up well. You put the lid on and you simmer. So I like my collard greens on the crispier side. So I start checking them at 45 minutes, and I probably take them off closer to 45 minutes to an hour. Some people like the collard greens disintegrate into your mouth. So for that, you need to simmer them for an hour, closer to an hour and a half, even as long as 2 hours. Now, the collard greens, the way we have prepared them, we've cut out that main vein, and that's the vein that is really, really tough. So we've only left the leaves, which cook much faster than the really roughagey parts of the green. So you may not need to cook the collard greens 2 hours to get that falling apart texture that you might be looking for. So that's something to think about.
You got me rethinking my whole collard green life right now. So there are many things I've been taking for granted that I'm just like but then I also started making collard greens when I made them on my own using 7-Up. So
yeah,
like a little lemon lime
well,
soda.
And a lot of people do add some form of sugar and sweetness to the collard greens. And I didn't grow up doing that, but I will say that, as someone who's interested in plants, I know that depending on when you plant and when you harvest the plant, it will have more or less carbohydrate in its leaves, which will determine how bitter or sweet the leaves actually taste.
That is some deep collard green science right there for the people, because I had no idea that the taste could vary like that. Look at you, collard green connoisseur.
Well, it's so for city kids like us, this seems like magic, but for people who do this year in, year out, they're like,
whisperers.
How did you not know this?
I can just bend my face to the collard green
No,
patch
but
and I just know everything.
they know that, when you plant this stuff, how long it's in the ground, whether it was a mild winter or a really cold winter, how many frosts happen.
I mean,
all of those
truthfully,
impact.
that stuff is amazing, and those are real survival skills that sadly many of us elite liberals on the East Coast in our cities do not have. I do not, so maybe I need to learn a little bit more about how to tell when a collard green is sweet.
Well, so those things will impact the taste of the collard greens. So perhaps in my great-grandmother's age, where she was actually cooking the collard greens, she knew whether sugar needed to be added or not. And maybe she kept the baby leaves and the sweetest leaves and sold or traded the more bitter leaves to someone else. Because, as my mom likes to tell me, they got their first Piggly Wiggly when she was 14. But for the previous years, there was no supermarket. So if you didn't grow it, if your neighbor didn't grow it, and if you didn't, raise chickens, there was nothing.
Let me find out your ancestors was out there bartering food and stuff.
Well,
sounds very like...
Well, that little red wagon that my uncle used, they used that to go down to the neighbor and trade. Like, one of their neighbors grew corn. My great-grandmother apparently liked succotash. So they would trade some of her collard greens for corn.
Oh, see, we can need to get back to that. Yeah. Being neighbors and being able to ask people for stuff without somebody giving you a neck swivel or a telling off.
Well, it wasn't an ask, it was a trade. And the corn lady, she liked collard greens and pecans.
Well, whatever
we had
it was,
abundantly
it
pecans.
Sounds wonderful and not like anything I've ever experienced in the city, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So anyway, that is the vibrational cooking collard green recipe.
Okay, Imani and Ede. Very nice. I have some real thinking to do right now when it comes to collard greens, and I want to know how everyone else out there feels. Has your whole world totally just been rocked?
I want to know too. I assumed that this was how everybody did it, and I've never asked anybody because collard greens seems like one of the simplest recipes. It doesn't need a whole lot of fussing. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, see, I kind of disagree. I think collard greens are incredibly complex, or at the very least, a multi-step process. Like, your whole recipe got me rethinking my collard green life right now.
Well, I will admit, washing them is that part really, I hate it. I hate it.
Not only that, we're talking about like the flavor combinations. Do you want liquid smoked? Do you want something smoked? Like, to each collard green maker their own. Well, I want to know what other folks out there think when it comes to the collard green game? Is it really simple? Is it complicated? Were you totally rocked like I was by the addition of an entire stick of butter? Weigh in, let us know. Email us at blackketoinfo@gmail.com. And make sure to stay connected to us on all of our platforms. Visit our website, blackketo.com, where you can find links to all of our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all that.
Join us next time when we'll be talking about diabetes.
Yay, another depressing topic.
But it's important, and we're going to save lives.
So let's all be depressed together and then save each other's lives.
Yo. Yo. Yo.
Thanks for listening. And remember to live keto and do keto for the culture. Peace.